Hi everyone, my name is Erica and I am going to give you some essential tips for new educators. The motivation and assessment strategies for high school students based on my two field experiences that I did assessment and motivation. So here we go. So the four tips for success that I'm going to focus on is identifying the difference between assessment for learning and assessment of learning. Tip number 2 is going to be active learning techniques. Tip number 3 is going to be student motivation to learn. And tip number 4 is recognizing students' different learning styles. So on this slide, I want to talk about my educational stance and core message. My educational stance and goal that I will continue to promote and practice is the instructional stance that is based on students' learning styles and needs. I think this is very important as an educator, and it's an effective tool to use in the classroom as well. When my students' individual learning styles and needs are determined, I feel it is my responsibility as an educator to give my students the necessary tools to succeed, and getting to know your students are key. While one class may respond to certain teaching methods, other classes may not. You might have to adapt and revisit the way that you're teaching the lesson. Another important goal as an educator is to provide a safe learning environment for my students so they feel comfortable during class discussions and are able to share their input without judgment or criticism. Some students feel as though they might be criticized and judged by their peers, and I think that is very important to initially establish that safe space of students feeling like they can share and discuss their opinions and, be respected and also be respectful. So the first, identifying the difference between assessment for learning and assessment of learning. There is a difference. Assessments for learning is the ability of the teacher to provide guided teaching for students, therefore increasing growth and learning as a result from their students. Assessment of learning is usually done at the end of a specific unit to evaluate what students have learned and the level of proficiency the student is at within the unit. So that is very important. The assessment of a student learning is especially important for a teacher to measure. This will determine if the teaching method a teacher is using are effective, if they need to change, if their class is, receiving and absorbing the information that you are teaching within the lesson. So, active learning techniques. Per my assessment field experience, there's several ways a teacher can incorporate active learning techniques for their students, such as group projects. This promotes teamwork, responsibility, and communication between students. Incorporation of ed tech tools such as Edpuzzle, Kahoot, Flipgrid, and Google Classroom are also great learning tools and techniques to do in your classroom. Active learning methods, I believe, encourage and engage students to engage in their learning by thinking, discussing, investigating, and creating. The field experience that I did at my local high school, the actual teacher, she incorporated these little fun, engaging games. Kahoot is very popular. It kind of the students kind of compete, and they have like a leaderboard, and they can do their own avatars, and everyone participated. She had no problems with participation. They all wanted to do it because it kind of they did it through a game essentially. So it was a lot of fun. Student motivation to learn. There are two important um, motivation learning techniques. One is intrinsic, which is the motivation that internally drives the student to learn. They strive to learn and or complete tasks due to internal satisfaction, and they are motivated to learn for the feeling of accomplishment. Now, extrinsic motivation are when students are motivated to learn because of external rewards, such as grades, praise, avoiding punishment, that sort of thing. So continuing with the intrinsic motivation and the extrinsic motivation, they both can be effective, but intrinsic motivation is more beneficial because it's more sustainable for long-term learning and engagement. It also leads to deeper engagement with the students in your classroom, and to provide students with a better understanding of the material being taught. It also does foster a learning environment that encourages collaboration, meaningful challenges, and provides students with the opportunity to express their interests and opinions. So, another key point is recognizing students' different learning styles. There are two types of many, but the main two types of learning styles that I am focusing on is social learners and individual learners. So, social learners, which I actually observed both of these types of learners in my field experience as well. So the social learners, they thrived in group settings, benefiting from discussions and collaborative activities, while individual learners prefer independent study and self-reflection. Now, I'm not saying that you always have to provide social and individual learners these I guess atmospheres. They do need to experience both because they're not always going to have to be solely in one group. They do need to learn to be a social learner as well as an individual learner, especially in high school and college. You may have to adapt and be, a little uncomfortable, which is fine. They need to be able to adapt to this different learning environment sometimes. So the pros and the cons of test taking, which is a type of assessment for students. So the pros, it provides a structured way to effectively assess learning, identifies area for improvement of students, it measures the progress of students, and it prepares for higher education. Now, the cons is that it can cause potential stress and anxiety for students. It does sometimes the teacher is teaching to the test, which can lead to a more narrowed curriculum. And then sometimes it provides an unfair teacher evaluation. It can inaccurately reflect their effectiveness in teaching, and not look and determine their abilities of teaching in the classroom. So the connections with theories that connected the most with my field assessments are cognitivism. It explores the internal processes of the mind, such as thinking, memory, problem solving. Constructivism, students are able to base their knowledge from their own experience and prior knowledge, and the importance of on hands learning in collaboration with other students. And then the last theory that connected the most is humanism, identifying and prioritizing individual student needs while promoting autonomy in learning. This theory also creates a more supportive and empathetic learning environment within your classroom. And the additional theories and concepts that I found as well is the social learning theory that identifies the importance of social interaction and observation between students, and the experiential learning theory of learning through engagement of activities and how to apply their learning to new situations. So, how will I use this newfound knowledge to enhance my own educational practice? So, I will be better at identifying students' individual strengths and weaknesses. I will be able to better understand how to identify the areas where my students may need additional support. I will be able to implement new and engaging activities to promote student involvement while learning, enhancing areas for professional growth and development, which will result in a more informed and effective teaching strategy for my students' benefit, of course. And then understanding student needs when it comes to individual learning styles as well as individual student needs. And that is my 4 tips. Again, it's identifying the difference between assessment for learning and assessment of learning. Tip 2, active learning techniques. Tip 3, student motivation to learn. And then tip 4, recognizing students' different learning styles. I hope this video was informational and beneficial, and good luck.